1991 was a very difficult year for me. The little farming community where I grew up, Golson, Texas, was so small that our little town, the school, only went to 8th grade. After 8th grade, we had to be bused 15 miles over to West High School, which was gigantic compared to our school. And all of us Golsonites, as we called each other, there were only about 16 kids per grade. We knew that once we got over to West, we would likely just disappear into their larger student body. So 91 started with me graduating 8th grade in Golson and knowing I was going to have to enter West High School in the fall. And all summer, it felt like West was waiting on me in the fall, like a beast under my bed. And my friends and I tried to spend as much time as we could with each other that summer because we knew things were going to change dramatically. Now, the dairy farm where I grew up was around 900 acres, and part of that property had been a turkey farm back in the 1970s. And this was a time before industrial farming, at least in McLennan County. And so the turkey farm was just a giant piece of property with these huge 12-foot tall fences, and the turkeys had just roamed free. And when the turkey farm went out of business, my dad bought this adjacent property for our dairy cows to just roam. And it was a great piece of property. The turkey farm had left all their old buildings and stuff and equipment, and it was filled with dense trees and briars. These huge Texas grapevines covered the tops almost like a roof over the woods. And me and my friends, well, we treated the turkey farm like the lost boys in Peter Pan treated Never Never Land, as if it was our own personal playground. We all had four-wheelers, and I had access to tractors and front-end loaders, so we made ourselves four-wheeler tracks that had jumps and turns that snaked all through those dense woods. And one of my friends, his name was Randy, had a old Datsun pickup that his stepdad would let him drive. He wasn't old enough to drive, by the way. It had this crappy old camper on the back of it. And if we were lucky, we could con Randy into taking that pickup on those four-wheeler tracks, which was an absolute blast, let me tell you. And a lot of nights, we would just camp out on the turkey farm. We'd spend all night racing around on those four-wheeler tracks, the only light from the moon and the single headlamp on the Suzuki Quad Racer. And when we got tired, we'd throw sleeping bags in the bed of Randy's pickup, and we'd do it again the next morning. One afternoon, Randy showed up with a recliner in the bed of that pickup. It was ratty and in terrible shape. And he said his stepdad had told him to take it to the dump, but we had another idea. We should make ourselves a camp right in the middle of the woods, and that recliner would be our first piece of furniture. And so we set about scavenging material from the dilapidated buildings on the turkey farm, and we built lean-tos. We put a big fence around it to keep the cows out. Right in the center, we dug a big fire pit, and right beside it, we put that recliner. And boy, we felt like kings of the woods. In 1991, that was the year that Metallica's Enter Sandman came out. And if you haven't heard that song in a while, or if you've never heard that song, it was a lot poppier than the thrash metal on their previous albums. And the lyrical content was a lot lighter, too. There wasn't anything about suicide or execution. Now, Enter Sandman was about the Sandman coming to help us escape from our nightmares. And there was even this kind of dreamy part at the end where these voices are singing, "Take my hand, we're off to Never, Never Land." And we spent many nights that summer having Randy drive us down to the only convenience store in Golson, where there was the only payphone in Golson, where we could call the radio station and request Enter Sandman. And then we would race back to the turkey farm so we could be on our four-wheeler tracks in the Datsun as Sandman played. And let me tell you something, there was something so rad about being in that pickup, engine roaring, Randy ripping through that manual transmission, grapevines and briars scraping the sides of the truck like fingernails on a chalkboard as lead singer James Hetfield bellowed out, "Exit light, enter night, take my hand, we're off to Never, Never Land." It felt like Metallica had written that song just for us. And then the school year started, and it was as absolutely horrible as we all knew it would be. The West kids picked on us country kids every chance they got. It felt like every day was us either avoiding or trying to win a fist fight. But on the weekends, we'd meet back up at the turkey farm at the camp, and we'd spend every free moment sitting in that recliner by the fire regardless of the heat, smoking marbles we'd stolen and hoarded throughout the week and racing around on our racetracks. And by this point, we'd already bought Metallica's album, so Enter Sandman, Nothing Else Matters, Wherever I May Roam, Twisting, Turning Through the Never, Sad But True, and the rest of that album was our soundtrack. And one day at school, one of my fellow Golsonites asked me if she could have her birthday party out at our camp. Now, Sherry and I had gone to Golson together. I'd known her since we were 4. So of course I said yes. I asked Sherry, how many people? And she goes, just a few friends. So I explained to Sherry that to get out to the turkey farm, they would have to drive up a half-mile lane that connected the gravel road to that piece of property, and it could be seen from my parents' house. So I said, come after dark in one car, kill the lights until you're out of view of my parents' house. So Sherry and her friends show up just a little bit after dark. And when she gets out, she goes, there might be a few more people coming. I was kind of worried, but she assured me. I told them about turning the lights off thing. And then 2 big pickups showed up. Filled. And when I say filled, y'all, I mean bed and cab, filled with West kids. I was pissed. Sherry knew we didn't like West kids. And then another pickup showed up. And another. And another. And another. And them damn things kept coming. And after a while, the half-mile lane that connected the gravel road to the turkey farm, it looked like the end of Field of Dreams, with a line of headlights winding through the night. There were so many people in our camp, I didn't know what to do. And all of them were West kids I didn't know, or if I did know them, I didn't like them. And they were all wearing cowboy outfits, and they were blaring country music out of their stupid jacked-up pickups. And me and my friends hated that shit. I got so depressed, I didn't know what to do. It was out of control. And so me and my friends, we got in Randy's Datsun, and we drove out into the middle of the woods, and we turned around, and we just watched the party from afar. It was surreal. There were probably over 100 people in this little camp partying. Music was blaring. There's even some naked people dancing by the fire like some kind of weird Wicker Man scenario. And there we were, sitting in that Datsun, watching. And then I saw some lights coming up the lane. And they didn't stop where everybody else had parked, which was weird, because if you didn't know where you were going, you were going to hit something in the woods. And then I saw a spotlight being shot out of the passenger side of that pickup, sweeping side to side, searching. And I recognized that spotlight. That was the spotlight Mom and Dad used when they were trying to find lost heifers in the woods. That was our farm truck, which meant we were well and busted. And the thing that hurt when Mom and Dad found us was how not overtly mad they were, if that makes sense. They were just sad and disappointed that I'd let this whole thing happen. And Dad made us come back to the farmhouse so he could give us a talking to. And Dad said that we would talk about punishment later. But right now, it was me and my friend's responsibility to go back out there and end that party. And Dad gave me the keys to the farm truck. And he said, you go back out there, and if folks don't have rides, you load them up like cows in the back of the pickup, the back of Randy's Datsun, and you take them somewhere, anywhere other than our farm. So I went back out with my friends. And we got there, and it was absolute chaos. The fence had been torn down. Our lean-tos were busted. Our beloved recliner was in pieces. And I stood there, surveying the damage. Now there's this moment in Enter Sandman when the music gets kind of quiet, and there's this heartbeat-like rhythm of the drums. Bum, 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 bum. And lead singer James Hetfield recites the "Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep" prayer. And then he kind of growls, "Hush, little baby, don't say a word, and never mind that noise you heard. It's just a beast under your bed, in your closet, in your head." And then the whole band kicks in like there's this huge explosion, and Hetfield bellows, "Exit light!" And as I stood there surveying the damage, thinking about how disappointed Dad had been in me, it felt like that moment in the song. And I no longer felt like West was waiting on me like a beast under my bed. I felt like the beast that Het was singing about. And I thought to myself, Dad's right. This is our farm. Fuck these West kids. And I rummaged around the farm truck, and I grabbed the cattle prods and cattle paddles that we used every day to get cows up. I distributed them to my friends, but I kept a cattle prod for myself. I wandered out in the crowd, and I started yelling, "Party's over. Y'all need to get the hell off my property." People were not paying attention to me. But one naked dude did hear me, and he turned around and he goes, "Hey, man, you need to calm down. This is a party." Just like that. I didn't even respond to that bullshit. I just looked that dude right in his eyes, and then I stabbed him in his naked crotch with that cattle prod and pushed the button as hard as I could. That summit fell to his knees screaming, and I just kept stabbing him, his naked ding-dong, shocking him as hard as I could, as if it was responsible for this whole fiasco. People started seeing what was happening and yelling and running, and my psycho friends took that as the cue to start hitting and shocking anybody who wasn't actively running and getting in their cars. It was an absolute melee. Few dudes tried to put up a fight, but we were pissed on our turf, and we had cattle prods and cattle paddles, and I used those every day to deal with ornery livestock, drunk West kids. Not a problem for the country boys. It took us about 2 hours to get everybody rounded up and off the property, and we ended up dropping off the kids who didn't have a ride down at the gas station where, at the beginning of the summer, we'd use the payphone to request Enter Sandman. I don't know how them West kids got to 15 miles back home from that point. I didn't care that night. I don't give a damn now. The next morning, we met back up at the camp to survey the damage, and it was in shambles. What had taken us half a summer to cobble together had taken them West kids mere hours to destroy. And the funny thing about this story is that I didn't even get in that much trouble for that. I think I got grounded for a week, but honestly, it didn't matter because what I looked forward to every week was destroyed. And I think Dad knew that that was kind of punishment enough. That was almost 30 years ago. And I know that camp would have fallen apart on its own. Like, I know that. And sometimes I kind of wonder if maybe those West kids, maybe they did me a favor by destroying that camp when I was madly in love with it, as opposed to when it fell apart due to childish neglect. But sometimes, when I'm lying awake at night and filled with heavy thoughts, I desperately want to reach out and take James Hetfield's hand and go back to Never Never Land. Thank you.